Welcome back, everyone. This is Austin Reville on our From the Vault series, brought to you right here by 2F Tactical, and I should give a shout out to our channel sponsor, the USCCA. But first off, if you please don't mind commenting, and subscribing. We're trying to bring you content all the time, and super excited to continue to bring you historical firearms. I mean, I'll admit that's where my passion is. My passion is historical firearms, and that's what started this entire company. As someone who is big into collecting and everything, and you see some of it behind us, and of course we'll break in, and we've already done some of these on our videos, so please look back over the videos and check out some of our From the Vault series from the past, and there are some up here that we haven't done any on yet, and we of course will do moving forward. The world is full of historical firearms. They all served a purpose. They all did interesting things. We love to talk about them. So without further ado, we want to dive into this particular machine gun. It's a light machine gun, the MG34. This is a German-made World War II machine gun. And there's some really interesting facts about this. Now, first off, we're going to take a moment and just talk about how this exists inside the United States. So this is what we call a transferable machine gun. That means anyone can buy it as long as you go through the NFA process, which is fingerprinting. You pay that $200 tax to the feds. Machine guns and destructive devices were not updated in the big, beautiful bill to $0 taxes. So there's $200 tax stamp still is in effect for items such as this. And there's only so many of them in the United States. And that's because under the Firearm Owners Protection Act of 1986, there was an amendment. We know it as the Hughes Amendment, which banned the addition of machine guns to the registry. Which means that it's permanently fixed at a certain amount. I shouldn't say permanently, because some have been added because they existed in, say, police stores or armories in time before that cutoff date. So the ATF has added some. I think they added like 4,000 or 5,000 earlier last year, and certainly more could theoretically be added at some point. And there is a clause in the '68 Gun Control Act which allows for amnesty registration at any time. And that's what I want to talk about. So when it comes to gun laws in the United States, so there's going to be kind of two parts to this video. We'll get into the history of the MG34 here shortly, which is super interesting. But when it comes to the gun laws in the United States, especially the National Firearms Act, as it pertains to machine guns, in order to be bought and sold, must always be in the National Firearms Act. And they can only arrive inside the National Firearms, generally speaking, from a manufacturer FFL. That's how that works. So us, as an 0702, we build a machine gun. We have to register it with the federal government. It goes on the National Firearms Act. Now, because we are past that 86 cutoff, it goes as a post sample, which means it cannot be sold to the general public. That was not always the case until that point. You know, Winchester wants to make a fully automatic carbine, the M2. All you have to do is send in the information to, at the time, I believe at the time it would have been the IRS, actually, that ran the NFA. They would turn that in, and then it could be bought and sold as long as you went through the National Firearms Act processes on the civilian market. And that became a bit of an issue post-World War II, especially with the proliferation of machine guns throughout warfare versus World War I. In World War I, most machine guns were larger, heavier, bulkier. You didn't see a lot of war greenbacks of them. There are some. You didn't see a ton. You saw a ton after World War II. GIs from the Pacific and European theaters would go and bring back various firearms from the conquered, whether it be German or Japanese or Italian or whatever. This is one of those. Now, because they brought them back, they did not go on the registry, though. That is, they technically brought them back illegally, but the government was signing off on requisition forms for them to bring it back, or little permission slips to say that there's a war bringback. No one cared. The National Firearms Act, believe it or not, was really not meant to regulate the average citizen. It was meant to regulate the gangster, the people who were doing it illegally. The GIs, no one really cared. They were allowing bringbacks. Well, that all changed in 1968. All of a sudden, Vietnam's going on. There are bringbacks from Vietnam. John F. Kennedy gets assassinated in 1963, and the race for gun control in the United States is on. And in 1968, when they brought about the Gun Control Act, they opened up the registry for non-FFLs, private citizens, to register their machine guns that they had with no consequences. Amnesty registration, their attempt to get them on the registry. This is one of those guns. How do you know this? How do you know if I have an amnesty registered transferable or a non-amnesty registered transferable? Well, it's going to be in the markings. And there is markings on this gun that you'll see here in the close-up that shows an IRS number. And that IRS number is what you would have had to submit to get this on the registry during that amnesty period that made this legal for you to own and buy and sell. Amnesty registered guns are just as expensive, if not more so, than your regular transferables. Transferables are extremely expensive. Pretty much every amnesty registered gun is a war bringback of some kind. Now, you got to remember 1968, these GIs came back. They brought them back with no problems. No one's really keeping up with it, and very few of them actually took advantage of the amnesty registry. They didn't take advantage of it, whether because they didn't trust the federal government or because they just didn't know about it. They didn't know that that was a thing that was allowing them to do. And also, it was a hassle to do. Let's just be real. It wasn't easy. Today with e-forms and going on the online portals and filling it out, places like Silencer Shop, huge shout out, we're a big dealer of theirs. It's really easy to make a Form 1 or Form 4 or something to an individual. That's just not the way it was. It was all snail mail. You had to go in and get fingerprinted. Of course, you had $200 to pay. Now, granted, during the amnesty, there was no $200 fee, but you still had to go through all the snail mail paperwork. And then when it came to purchasing these things, you had to get letters from your sheriff's department allowing you to purchase it. It was a huge headache. A lot of this stuff has only gone away in the last 10, 15 years. It's very recent. Or become digitized, I should say, too. That's all very, very recent. So very few people actually took advantage of this. And that's how we get something like this in the United States. War bringback, amnesty registered, it is transferable. Anyone could own it as long as you have the money. It is extremely expensive. This is on loan from one of our customers. Huge shout out to him and being able to use this. Now, when it comes to the MG34, this is the older brother to the MG42. And we're very familiar with the MG42 from the opening scenes of Saving Private Ryan. Despite the fact that's not how you would shoot it because you would melt the gun with that kind of long trigger pull, the reality is this is the older brother. There are some differences between the MG42 and the MG34. The main thing is the MG42 is stamped where this is milled. This is a heavier, more labor-intensive gun than the MG42. In terms of mechanics, rate of fire, all that, pretty much untouched. So this is an MG42 mechanically, just not in manufacturing. And there's some reasons for that, because again, you want to crank things out faster, so you simplify things. If you can stamp it, it's a lot easier to stamp than it is to mill things out. With that being said, this does feature some really innovative things that allows it to be somewhat modular, which is unusual for the time. This would come about in 1929, and that is kind of an important date. 1929 is pre-Third Reich. The Hitler and his party has not come to power yet when this thing is actually entering trials. And it is entering trials in a Treaty of Versailles world, meaning it's technically illegal. They had heavy restrictions, Germany did, on what they could stockpile in terms of weapons. In fact, it was like less than 1,000 machine guns total they could have underneath the Treaty of Versailles. So they're looking to modernize their military in violation of the international treaty, which of course would be accelerated just a few years later in 1933 onwards, when they were doing it in secret. That would eventually lead to the invasion of the Sudetenlands and Poland and spark World War II. And this is one of the updates. They wanted to go away from the water-cooled, heavy, bulky guns that we saw throughout the First World War to air-cooled guns that would honestly be still used to this day. You don't see a lot of water-cooled guns anymore, and a lot of it's just the weight and bulkiness versus what you get out of it. Air-cooled is the way to go. But there is a drawback to that. Air-cooled doesn't cool off quite as fast as water, so therefore your barrels are going to heat up way quicker and they're going to go bad. So everything has to be quick to change. Something that you can do in the field without much hassle. So you would always have a team with something like this. These things weigh almost 27 pounds. They're not light. So you're going to have a team to carry your ammo and your belts. You might have a team to carry the plates or the bipods. And you're going to have team members, or squad members, I should say, carrying extra barrels for this thing because you're going to shoot that barrel out very quickly. The rate of fire on these started out in early models around 800 to 900 rounds a minute. By the time we got to World War II, by the time we got to World War II, you're pushing 1,500 rounds a minute. These things, it was affectionately known as, or unaffectionately known, I don't know what the right term there is, Hitler's buzzsaw, and it shoots at an incredibly high rate of fire. It does have a semi-automatic, full automatic function on it. It's actually in the trigger. It's a double trigger, and based on how you pull it and where you pull it, you can effectuate different fire rates. Now, with that being said, we were talking about the barrel. The barrel is real easy to change, relatively speaking, to guns of the time. There's a latch right here that you're going to push in, and you're going to rotate the receiver down. And from there, you can pop the barrel out. It's hard to do with one hand, but just like that, the barrel comes out. Then you would just pick up your spare barrel, and you would slap this thing in. Be very careful with this because you don't want to damage the firearm. And then you rotate the whole thing back up into place, just like that, and you have a new barrel in, and you're ready to shoot. So the tripod is almost longer than wider than my table. Very unusual to have something this big, but that's awesome. Now, the other thing that this was designed was for a multitude of uses, though, and we should point that out. So you see a piece missing right here. This would be for like an anti-aircraft sight. You do have a adjustable aperture on your sight, but if you had that anti-aircraft sight on, you would just push down your sights to make this all about your anti-aircraft gun. So again, very, very innovative and kind of modular, at least modular for World War II. Is this as modular as a modern gun? No. But the fact that you could swap parts in and out on this thing fairly quickly is a relatively unique design. It has a very quick changing muzzle device where you just pick up this front piece. You can unscrew your muzzle device and utilize different things. Again, this kind of innovation at the time is actually rather impressive. This particular model is from the DOT factory in 1944. About a little over 577,000 of these would be made. And the DOT factory is a Czech factory. This is a belt-fed light machine gun. It's chambered in the 8mm Mauser cartridge. Your feeding ramp and tray is right here. You would put your belt in, close it, and then rack the action. It is a relatively easy weapon to shoot. With its heaviness, it is actually fairly controllable given how heavy it is compared to some modern guns. We did an HK-21. It's somewhat comparable to that. The rate of fire is insane. You have to really watch this thing or you will melt the barrel. It's that fast. One of the cool things I do think about this gun is it's still modernly relevant. Because this would eventually develop into the MG42, which would later become the MG3, which is still used by German military to this day. There's not a ton of changes mechanically to this thing. They have slowed down the rate of fire a little bit, and it's a lot lighter and a little bit shorter in the modern world. But this gun is the German version of the M2 Browning in a lot of ways. Something that was developed and has still been produced in some form through its entire history and to this day, and is finding new homes that are being used in conflicts throughout the world. We are seeing stuff like this used in Ukraine. We're seeing stuff like this used in Syria, so on and so forth, Afghanistan. The reality is they made a lot of these, over nearly 600,000 of these things, and that's not including the MG42, which mechanically has a lot of the same similarities. The fact is that the future of this particular gun, it's hard to call it bright because war is obviously terrible, but like it's not going away. This is still going to be in use in militaries around the world, probably for all of time. That 8mm cartridge is here to stay, and it's just because for 100+ years that was the cartridge. And it's still being produced in mass, even though it's kind of gotten harder to find in the United States. That's not necessarily the case in other parts of the world. And something like this is still going to find a home with somebody, and they're going to use it for what it was intended. And that we should talk about what was the intention behind this thing. Yes, as an anti-aircraft gun, as a mountable piece, it could be used in aircraft themselves, though we often saw cannons, technically, 20mm cannons used in German aircraft, where we use 50 cal Brownings in our aircraft in World War II. This was meant to be the squad automatic weapon of World War II. When in the modern world we see the M249 SAW, and of course we're moving to the M250 now. That's our squad automatic weapon. The group in a platoon that is designed for suppressive fire or help holding fixed positions. That's exactly what this was designed for. And it was made to be relatively easy to maneuver and move versus the machine guns of World War I, which were water-cooled, and they had a lot of moving pieces. It allowed you to take, the amount of people that would be necessary to run one of these effectively in combat and shrink the number of those people down. You could see as many as 10 running the older machine guns of World War I, and then maybe 3 or 4 running something like this by World War II. We did see a lot of these on the Atlantic Wall. So while, yes, the MG42 is the more famous light machine gun from Germany, there's definitely some of these that were on the Atlantic Wall and in North Africa and were vehicle mounted. These things were all over the battlefield, and like I said, they are all over the battlefield to this day. Relatively easy to clean. I'm not going to fully break this thing down, but you just rotate the stock off, and you can slide the whole bolt mechanism out and clean it from there. Again, fairly easy shooter, not anything too crazy. Really enjoyed my time on this. Unfortunately, we didn't take a video of that. That was one of the, we had a very quick moment to do it, and I did not have a video camera with me, so I do apologize. I'm sure our customer will let us borrow this again, so we'll have an opportunity to showcase this in the future. But with that being said, thank you for checking us out. Please like, comment, subscribe, help our channel grow. If you would like to support us, it's certainly not necessary. Our goal is to always keep our content free, though there will be some things that we're kind of excited to bring to you, hopefully here in the near future. Unfortunately, YouTube won't let us show, so you can always check us out on Rumble. But if you would like to support us, you can check out our Patreon. And again, anything helps. It helps us bring better production value to you. But till next time, guys, we'll see you then.